Introducing Venture X, Capital One's new travel card for people always asking,
where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Maroon Friday edition of the Yard. I hope it's a payday for you weekly and bi-weekly wage earners. Perhaps today is the day. Or maybe if you're a person that gets paid on the last business day of the month. I don't know. Maybe today's your day too. Who knows? No matter how you get paid, I hope you got plenty. I hope you're able to get out and go do some fun things. It is a beautiful day here in Starkville. A little cold and perhaps a little windy at times, but it is a beautiful day. It is usually a beautiful day in Starkville, Mississippi. A lot of things to talk about. I don't know if you guys have read, but late yesterday I published a story over on genespage.com. We are been running a 60% off on the annual subscription promotion. It's a good time for you to jump on board. But this was a free article about Darunye Wilson. I have worked on this for the last couple of days and had some conversations about the murder investigation into the untimely passing of Mississippi State former wide receiver Darunye Wilson. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. But I'll share with you this. I don't know that I could be a crime reporter. You know, every so often you kind of dip into something fresh and something perhaps that, is kind of a peripheral issue, within your scope of journalism. Primarily I'm a Mississippi State guy. And, of course, the fact that Bear also a Mississippi State guy, the lines kind of cross. But, after having some interactions with some people in his family and, of course, some people close to him, I don't know that I could consistently cover crime. I have a lot of respect for the people that do. I don't know that I have the stomach for it. It has really impacted me, I'll be honest with you. It really, really has. It's been just over 2 years since Bear was shot and killed in his own residence. Not a lot of answers. So I'm going to tell you what I learned a little bit later in the show, but a tip of the cap to those out there on the crime beat, because that is a skill set that I have not acquired, is being able to kind of distance yourself from that. And, that's the thing. There are still victims. There are still living victims that are still living with the trauma of all these things that have transpired. And some of these folks, will never be the same. It's one thing to go out there and break a recruiting story, or it's a coaching search, or, that stuff's, that impacts people's lives too. But there is not a finality with that sort of stuff. The people continue to move on. Life goes on. But when someone you love has been murdered, it's difficult to move past. And sadly, I have had some people in my life that have been murdered, but not a brother, and not a sibling, not a child. And so I have a lot of respect for those that are dealing with that. I had a friend of mine, kind of a friend of a friend, one of those people that ends up, being in your circle of influence for a short time, and life moved on, and he wasn't in my life for a while, and then occasionally I would see him or hear from him, and then I heard that he got into a fight at a bar, and 3 guys followed him home and killed him. And to this day, no one has been brought to justice, and it infuriates me. A lot of people say, it was just an accident. It wasn't just an accident. It wasn't an accident to us, and I won't get into the details of the case, but let me just tell you that this wasn't a situation where there was a barroom brawl gone bad. You don't leave the scene and follow somebody home and then kill them and call it a crime of passion. And so there is some frustration with all of that. And so I understand those losses, not to this level, though. Not to this level. It's one of those things you begin to think, man, this guy was a good guy. He didn't deserve this. No matter what he went through in life, no matter the mistakes he made, he didn't deserve to have his life terminated prematurely. And that was the case, with my buddy Jason. But, we move on with life, and you hope at some point there's a break in the case. And my hope is that Bear's family don't have to wait as long as Jason's family is having to wait. You hope that somebody will come forward and and share some information. So I'm going to update you on what I've learned. I think it's important that we keep this story alive. Bear is and was one of us. And while he is no longer living, he's no longer on this side of the grass, his family is. And I think it's important that his family are well aware that we have not forgotten, that we have not moved on. We may enjoy our life and, we're going to live life on life's terms, but at the same time, too, we can still hold out some hope and some support that this family gets some justice for a guy that meant an awful lot to an awful lot of us. So I'm going to update you on that, and I got some recruiting stuff to talk about. There's always some late developments, and they're not always positive. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later in the show, and we're going to talk about a big Mississippi State women's basketball win. A lot of people ready to give up on the season. It's a good thing that the Bulldogs have not given up on the season. Let's thank our good friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I had lunch there earlier this week on Wednesday. You guys, I shared with you then I was going. Some of you showed up. I don't know if we just happened to cross paths accidentally, but I had a handful of people that came up and said, "Hey, Steve, love the podcast. Hey, Steve, really enjoy the Boneyard." You take a few pictures, shake a few hands, you have a good day. It's always nice to be able to meet you guys. I know that we have become part of each other's lives, and it's nice that we have a relationship. We have the opportunity to kind of break bread together, and so I appreciate you guys coming up and saying hello. Wish you guys the absolute best. And again, thanks so much for your support of the show. But Bulldog Burger Company, I went and had the sliders. I like those Sloppy Joe sliders, but they're a great lunch item. Because that's the thing. When you buy a hamburger from Bulldog Burger Company, you're making a commitment. I mean, you really are. And it could change the course of your day. And what I mean by that is you may get so full at lunch and say, you know what, I'm not going to eat big tonight. I'm still full from lunch. Because the portions at Bulldog Burger Company are so plentiful. To me, the Sloppy Joe sliders are just the right size for lunch. I don't know that I could eat it for dinner, but I like it for lunch. So I had that. I've recently also got the freshman 15 with some onion rings. I'm an onion ring guy. I don't like onions. I don't like uncooked onions at all. At all. Matter of fact, I think people that put onions in potato salad are probably demented. I think something's wrong. But I like onion rings, and they make the best onion rings in town at Bulldog Burger Company. So have those perhaps as your side the next time. Those fries are great and substantial, but sometimes you want to change it up. 3 great locations now to serve you right here on University Drive in Star Vegas, and of course Gloucester Street there in Tupelo. What a great location that is. And the brand new one, Lake Harbor Drive in the Richmond Flowwood area. You go by, check them out, tell them I sent you. Let them know that you're a Boneyard person. You appreciate them sponsoring the Boneyard. We've had a great partnership for many, many years, and I hope it continues for many, many years. I enjoy going in there and eating. I told you guys I was a fan of them, I think, before they were a fan of mine. Love Bulldog Burger Company, a great local place run by people that do a great job and have fed people in this neck of the woods for many, many years. They know how to feed folks, so go check them out. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet, M-E-A-T. All right, let's talk some women hoops. Big news earlier this week, Rickea Jackson goes into the NCAA transfer portal. We talked about that at length on Wednesday. We will not belabor the point today. We are moving on. Mississippi State women's basketball team played their first game without Rickea Jackson as a member of the active roster. Now, there have been some times that she has not been available to the team. And ironically, Mississippi State is 3-4 in the Southeastern Conference, and all 3 of those wins came without Rickea Jackson. I don't say that as a criticism of her. I say that to say that this is a team that's capable of winning games in this league, even without Rickea Jackson. And here's what I think happens, too, is when somebody that maybe is a prolific scorer is removed from your lineup, other people are kind of challenged to step up, and you share the basketball a little bit more, because sometimes you become a little bit too reliant on one player. You start thinking, hey, we need to get the ball to Rickea, let her get a shot up. And look, hey, there's no doubt about it. She can score the basketball. But she wasn't available last night, and sure enough, we had some players step up, and we did share the basketball better. It was outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. You guys may have forgotten this. Missouri beat South Carolina, and then Mississippi State beat Missouri to death last night. The final score was not truly indicative of how well Mississippi State played in the ballgame. We give up some points late that allowed them to kind of make the score somewhat respectable. but Mississippi State was by far the better team. We had 4,426 people as a paid attendance. There were not nearly that many on hand. And that's one of the things that I saw too, and I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to give them any glory on this show. Like, oh, they mentioned you on the show, even though you're a negative twit. I see people out there, talk about attendance. Guys, it was a 5:30 tip midweek. What did you expect our fans to do? Oh, well, people are voting with their mouth. They're all upset. But no, it's 5:30 on a Thursday on a team that is kind of middle of the road right now. We love women's basketball. We do at Mississippi State. We do. We've learned to love it. But don't be critical of our fans because we couldn't make a midweek game at 5:30. And don't use the fact that we had kind of limited attendance yesterday to push your own narrative. Give me a break. Get over yourself. All right, Mississippi State wins the first quarter 24-19, the second 22-17, the third 17-10. At that point, the rest of the game is academic. Missouri does win the final quarter 16-14. Mississippi State 77-62 winners, advance the overall record to 12-7, 3-4 in the Southeastern Conference, and Missouri 15-6 overall, 4-4 in the SEC. Would you call it an upset? I don't know. It's probably just a game between two teams that are kind of similarly situated. But when you factor in what these ladies have been through this week, then you look at it and say, hey, Mississippi State probably was expected to lose this game. However, came out and pretty much dominated. The game was tied just twice. The lead changed hands just once. Mississippi State dominated the game. The hero of the ball game for the Mississippi State women, I'll give you a chance to think. It was Katarian Thompson. How about that? I mean, she has been largely a reserve player for Mississippi State. We talk about people stepping up. Here it is. Here it is. Katarian Thompson plays all 40 minutes. That's right, all 40 minutes. The only player on either team to go the duration of the game. And she was as hot as a Saturday night special. 10 from 15 from the floor, 7 of 12 from 3. You heard that right. 7 of 12 from 3. Just one rebound, just one personal foul, 1 assist, 1 turnover, 3 steals, and 27 points. You're like, well, Steve, how do we make it up? Well, maybe Katari Thompson's like, hey, guys, dogs, I got you. It's just one ball game, but my goodness, what a great individual effort from a player that has not had a major impact on the team this year. And it's incredible. That's kind of how things work sometimes. All of a sudden, you get somebody out of the way and allow somebody else some room to breathe. And if nothing else, I think Doug Novak and these ladies have proven once again there is no quit in this team. Absolutely no quit. Nobody gave them a chance to go win at Alabama. They do. Well, what, 7 scholarship players? They go out there and make it happen. Then you beat Vanderbilt, won back-to-back, and then we gave South Carolina all they wanted and then some, and people expect us to get blown out. Doug Novak is not going to be your basketball coach next year at Mississippi State on the women's side. He's not. And it would be easy for a guy like him to kind of mail it in. And even if you sat in a job interview across from somebody else, you can say, hey, listen, guys, what'd you expect? I mean, I kind of got the job late. It was a very difficult circumstance. I mean, the head coach resigned due to some personal issues. I wasn't hired to do this job, and next thing I know, I've got these issues, and then our leading scorer leaves the team. What'd you expect? I mean, that would be an easy situation to sell. But Doug Novak's not having that. He's like, no, we're going to go out here and compete. Now, the flip side of it is, too, you want to talk about a resume builder. Doug Novak can go in there and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, here's the situation. I'd never coached on the women's side. I've never had to direct that offense. They see the head coach leave. I take over. We end up having a winning season. Our leading scorer leaves, and we find a way to win some ball games. That says a lot about Doug Novak. No matter how you feel about him or the direction of the program, you have to be somewhat respectful of the fact that Doug Novak is getting a lot out of these players. Anastasia Hayes, she was one of the most prolific scorers in the country last year. She gives you 24. So you got 2 players scoring over 20 points. Missouri didn't have a single one. They had 3 in double digits. We only had the 2. But 2 of our ladies pitched in 51 points. 51. That'll get it done. Shooting the basketball a little bit better, too. 51% on the day for the Lady Bulldogs. Danae Carter rounding back into good shape herself, 35 minutes of action, 4 of 7 from the floor, pulled down 5 rebounds, did get in a little bit of foul trouble, but not too significant, able to play through it. 8 points for her. Rickea Jordan also back in the lineup, 29 minutes for her, 2 of 5 from the floor, knocked down 1 3, pulled down 4 rebounds. She also got in a little more serious foul trouble with 4 fouls, pitched in 5 points, but she'll get going. And Maya Taylor, there may not be a more underappreciated player in the women's basketball recent tradition than Maya Taylor. She could have gone anywhere in the country. She elected to come here and be a part of our great program at the time. You never hear of any drama from her. She just goes out there and competes. And, that big play against Alabama made all the difference in the world. She goes 38 minutes, just 2 of 9 from the field, but hands out 8 assists against 1 turnover and also has 6 steals. Just 4 points on the night, but she was a facilitator for this team. Anastasia Hayes also goes 13 minutes, has 9 points. That's a pretty good contribution from your bench right there. We get Charlotte Cole and Afley Jones in the game late, and that's part of that late run by Missouri too. We're emptying the bench out a little bit. But a great win for Mississippi State against a team that is still contending to get into the NCAA tournament. They have a lot to play for. And as well as I do, when the Tigers got ready to get on the plane to come down here, they're like, hey, we're fixing to go win this ball game. Rickea's not there. Oh, this bunch of girls down here, we're fixing to run them out of their own gym. And then you have to go get back on that plane and go home, with a whooped tail. I love the effort from this team. 26 points in the paint, 24 points off turnovers, just 2 second chance points. That's interesting, right? 13 on the fast break, 9 from the bench. Got to get better from free throw. We're right at 70%. But the reality of it is this is a ball game. Most people expected Mississippi State to lose. They didn't lose, and they won pretty emphatically. That's the thing that I go back and think about with this one. It's like, what? Even if we kind of believed a little bit, we get down here in the, in the fourth quarter, and this game is basically over. Guys, we're up 77-60 with under a minute to play. The game was over. We could have done whatever we wanted to in that fourth quarter. I guess at one time in the fourth they cut it to under 10, but by and large, you pretty much led by double digits throughout the final period. That'll win you a lot of ball games. With just under 2 minutes to play, we knocked down a 3. Kataria Thompson makes it a 73-58 game with 15-point lead there with just under 2 minutes to play. It's over. It's absolutely over. And so, again, an unexpected surprise, and not to say that, Missouri was expected to come in here and just run roughshod over us. But they were a team that probably expected to come win the ball game. I expected them to come win the ball game. They didn't. So what's next for the ladies? Well, let's talk about that for a second. Again, ladies now 12-7 overall. Got some more SEC play in front of us. So we will host Texas A&M on Sunday. Now, I don't know if you know this, Texas A&M not really playing exceptionally well right now. And so now you start counting wins, right? Used to we would kind of schedule watch everybody else, and we think, okay, well, this is a W, this is a W. On the women's side, A&M has really struggled this year. Of course, Gary Blair has announced his retirement at season's end. The Aggies 11-8 overall, just 1-6 in the conference. They've lost 2 in a row. They're also 0-5 on an opponent's home floor. 3-0 on a neutral floor. Well, it won't be neutral, and I think we'll have a pretty decent crowd. I think some people now will get out and really support this team. That's one thing that I will say, especially on the ladies' side. We have some very tried and true fans. Let's run down the SEC schedule. We're not going to go through the whole thing for A&M. They open at LSU on the SEC slate. They lose 75-66. They go to Knoxville and get drilled 73-45. They lose to Florida at home in double overtime, 97-89. That's not a great Florida team either. They get beat by 20 by Dawn Staley in South Carolina there in Colonial Life Arena. They beat Johnny Harris in Auburn 71-53 there in College Station. They get beat at home by Ole Miss 80-63. Lady Rebels playing well. Got beat pretty well last night, but good team. This same Missouri team that we just beat hosted A&M last weekend and beat them 78-69. So you look at this and say, you know what, hey, if I'm Doug Novak, I've got a little juice. We've got a little esprit de corps kind of spreading among the roster. And you begin to think, hey, here's the deal. Got a chance to go win another ball game, ladies. We get to do it in front of our crowd. And I feel certain there will be a much better crowd this weekend, because I know how much you guys love these ladies. I know you do. You want to get out and support them, and they're fighting hard for Mississippi State. So that'll be a 3 p.m. tip. I believe that's going to be an SEC Network game. Be sure and check that out if you can't make it to town. But this is a very winnable game for Doug Novak and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I mean, I don't expect to get 27 out of Kateri Thompson, but you found another option scoring-wise. So good win for Mississippi State, and now we can kind of stack some things up, and that's you kind of look at it and you think, hey, we got a chance to actually go on a bit of a run here. We can continue to play well. We didn't play well last weekend against Arkansas. We didn't. But look at what's ahead on the schedule. It's a little soft. A&M at our place. We go to Auburn, who's dead last in the SEC. We get Florida at our place. And then you got Ole Miss here. Now, Ole Miss playing well. And I think if you look at the schedule, these are 3 winnable games before we get to Ole Miss. And then, what do these two teams look like once we host them? Have we found a new identity? Are we more of a cohesive team, without Rickea Jackson? That kind of remains to be seen. We showed that last night. Now we got to kind of put some things together. And then we got to go to Kentucky, who is also kind of struggling this year. And so you begin to look at the schedule, and you realize things aren't quite so bleak. There are some winnable games on the schedule. Do we make the tournament? I don't know, probably not. But is this a team capable of putting together a winning season? Is this a team capable of making some racket down the stretch? Yeah, I think so. One thing's for sure, we know they're not going to quit.
We travel to see what's around the bend and what we're capable of. And now Capital One's new class of travel card can keep up with you. Introducing Venture X from Capital One. With 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy. Venture X, for those always asking, where next? Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
All right, Mississippi State men's basketball back in action this weekend. And, again, as much as I hate losing, I'm not bitter or resentful at all about losing to Kentucky. I mean, yeah, we had an opportunity to win the game, and in the immediate aftermath of that game, you're like, oh my gosh, we should have done this. But then you begin to realize too, without Tolu Smith, being able to control the Kentucky post, very, very difficult. And so here's how it's kind of going to break loose here. And again, Tolu will not expected to play this weekend. And then they'll reevaluate on the weekend. You never know. But, I was told earlier in the week that he would be out this week. But you're going to play Texas Tech. And Red Raiders have played really well. They have played really well. And we had talked last week, if we could somehow get a split here, that would be huge. And I will say this again. What happens tomorrow is not going to diminish my expectations or my enthusiasm for Mississippi State men's basketball. It's not. I know sometimes I'm kind of up and down with all of that. I believe in this team. I do believe we have the talent to make the NCAA tournament. I know many of you do as well. We are a very talented team. And we showed that on Tuesday night, even in defeat, without one of our best players. Now, Texas Tech, difficult at home. But can it be more difficult than Rupp Arena? I would say probably not. If I'm Iverson Molinar, I'm thinking, you know what, hey, we went up there and nearly beat nationally ranked Kentucky in their own gym. We got a shot this weekend. We got a shot. Now, Texas Tech, 12-0 at home. But let's kind of look at this schedule. I think you're going to look, when I rattle these names off, you're going to say, yeah, they're 12-0, but I don't know they've played a lot of teams quite as talented as us. They open up the season with an 89-74 win in Lubbock over North Florida. They follow that up with an 88-62 win over Grambling State in Lubbock. They get Prairie View A&M 84-49 in Lubbock. They go on the road in the St. Padre Island Battle on the Beach They take care of Incarnate Word, 84-62. They take care of Omaha, 96-40. And they beat Lamar, 89-57. Their first game in a true road environment was at Providence College. They actually played that in the Dunkin' Donuts Center, but it's a long way to go, and it's going to be a partisan crowd. They lose to Providence College, 72-68. Interesting. Then they play in Knoxville, and they beat Tennessee. And that's their best win of the season, 57-52 at the time anyway. 57-52, winners in Knoxville. Then they get Arkansas State in Lubbock, and they beat those guys 75-62. They play Gonzaga in the Jerry Colangelo Classic, competed for a while, but lose out there in Phoenix 69-55. Then we go back home. It's Eastern Washington, 78-46 winners. Alabama State, 75-53. Then they go to Ames, Iowa to open up the Big 12 schedule. And it's a 51-47 loss against a very good Iowa State team. Then they beat Kansas. This is their marquee win of the year. I mentioned earlier that the win over Tennessee at the time was their biggest win. Then they beat Kansas, 75-67, number 6. You say, well, it's kind of a fluke. Well, no. The next game, they go to Baylor and beat number 1 Baylor, 75-62. Oklahoma State, they beat those guys too, 78-57. Oklahoma State also beat Baylor too. They travel to Manhattan, Kansas. They lose 62-51. They beat Iowa State again, the sweep at the United Supermarkets Arena, 72-60. They get West Virginia at their place, 78-65 winners. They travel to Kansas and gave Kansas all they wanted in Allen Fieldhouse, and that was on Monday, a 94-91 loss in double overtime. And so you look at Mississippi State and you look at Texas Tech and say, you know what, hey, their highs have been much higher than ours this year. They have beaten some of the top teams in the country. They're certainly capable of beating us. They're certainly capable of making it a very hostile environment. They also lose to a college blue blood earlier this week in an overtime game, just as we did. We're going to have to bring our best effort. There's no question about it. We are not going to be able to just kind of show up and hope for the best. We're going to have to bring it. Very difficult place to play. As I ran down the schedule, very, very weak non-conference schedule. Very, very weak, especially at home. That happens for a lot of teams, right? And so you would say, you know what, hey, I don't know if I'm a believer. And then you get into Big 12 play and you see that they have, 4 wins against the top 15 teams in the country at the time? This is a legit team. This is a resume-building opportunity, to say the least. They're 15-5 overall, 5-3 in their conference, and again, 12-0 at home. Let's look a little closer at the Red Raiders. Bob Knight's not there anymore. But this is a team that can put some points on the board. Their scoring margin is plus 14, 74.8 points per game, allowing just under 61. Their team also that shoots it pretty well, just under 50%, 47% as a team, allowing just 38%. 3-point attempts, not especially prolific, but they're one of these teams too that's pretty efficient with it, shooting 32%. They average just under 7.3s per game. They allow almost 8. So there are obviously some opportunities to be had there on the perimeter. We're not a great perimeter shooting team, but perhaps Shaquille Moore can spot up and make a timely 3 when we need it. Free throw percentage, not very good, 68%. Their opponents are shooting 67%. So if that becomes, maybe a war of attrition, maybe if we can do a better job at the free throw line, we can kind of keep this game a little bit closer. Rebounding has been a strength for them. They are a plus .72 in rebounding margin, averaging 38 per game, allowing just under 31 per game. 14.1 assists, so they're obviously a team sharing offense. Turnovers really hadn't been a big deal, for them. They're a team that averages 13.5. They create 16.4. So you got basically a three turnover differential between what they commit and what they force. On the steal side, they're averaging 8 a game and allowing 6.3. Not a lot of blocks, just 66 on the year. They've allowed 52. This is a team, obviously, that is very well balanced. Now let's kind of look inside that team in and of itself. And when you look at the numbers, it really jumps out to you how balanced they are from a scoring standpoint. They have 5 players that are averaging double digits. So you can't just isolate somebody and say, okay, we're going to make somebody else beat us beside this player. Leading scorer for the Red Raiders is Bryson Williams. He is a super senior from Fresno, California, a 6'8", 240-pound forward, averaging 13.7 points a game, pulling down 4.8 rebounds. He's got 7 of their 66 blocks as well. Number 2 scorer, averaging 12 points a game, is a junior guard, a 6'6", 215-pound guard from Chicago, Illinois, Lincoln Park High School. Terrence Shannon, number 1. He will be the guy wearing number 1, a long and lean guard. He has played in 9 games, missed some time, but when he has been available, he has been very efficient for them. A name perhaps you know is Kevin McCullough, redshirt junior out of San Antonio, Texas, another 6'6", 210-pound guard, averaging just at 11 points a ball game, but also a little bit better rebounder than some of these other guys. 5.6 points, 5.6 rebounds per game, which actually leads a team. That's pretty significant there. Davian Warren, another 6'6" guard. It's like you run down this roster and you look at all this length. Obviously a pretty good team that should be good defensively. Another super senior from Buffalo, New York, from Bishop Tamon St. Jude High School. Another veteran guy with some length, 10.5 points per ball game. Also a guy that's pretty active on the glass, not quite the same numbers as some others. But again, the thing that just jumps off the paper is just how balanced this team is. Kevin O'Banner, another senior, a veteran player, 6'8", 235, out of Houston, Texas, attended Mount Zion Christian Academy. Another guy in double digits, 10.3, pulling down 5.1 rebounds a game, which is second on the team. So you look at this and you say, okay, well, who do you focus on offensively? And that's the thing you look at. When you are getting this level of balanced scoring from 4 and 5 spots on the floor, it makes you very difficult to defend. And then when you've got veteran players, what did we just say there? 4 seniors and a junior. Old wins in college. It just does. It doesn't matter to sport. When you've got guys out there that have some experiences, they know what it's like to kind of get out there on the road and see how things look. They're not going to be intimidated by the moment. Another name to remember is number 25, Adonis Arms, and guess what he is, guys? Just under 6'6". He's 6'5", 200, a super senior from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Desert Vista High School. The fact that there's a Desert Vista in Milwaukee, Wisconsin is a bit of a misnomer. But when I look at this team, it's impressive. And I don't know that we have played anybody this year that is quite as balanced from a scoring standpoint. So we're going to have to defend all 5 spots on the floor. We're not going to be able to double. We're not going to be able to lay off one guy. These are guys that can shoot the basketball pretty well. They clearly share the basketball. And it just appears to me this is a team that is capable of making a nice run in the NCAA tournament. You can see why other teams have struggled with them because of the fact that you just can't focus your defensive effort on one guy. This is going to be a very interesting ball game for Mississippi State. I'm eager to see how we match up. Now, in case you were unaware, that's going to be a 5 p.m. tip on ESPN2. So be sure and tune in for that. If you're out there in the Lubbock, Texas area, I know the Mississippi State Bulldog coaching staff and players would love to hear your voices in the stands there. So be sure and go check it out. Very difficult game in front of us. Very difficult. This is a team, obviously, that's ranked very highly and very highly regarded, but it is a quad 1 opportunity for us. We have a chance to go in there and kind of boost the resume. And again, we looked at this week, last week, and said, you know what? It's going to be 2 difficult teams to play on the road, and then we're not going to have Tolu Smith. Even if we go 0-2 this week, I don't think all hope is lost. But what you'd like to see is Mississippi State get kind of that season-defining win on the road against a team of the caliber of Texas Tech. Are we capable of doing it? Yes. Do I expect it? I don't at this point, but I do think after what we saw Tuesday night, that Mississippi State will have a good plan. They will go in there and they will execute and play at a high level, and then we'll see how the chips fall. We just kind of need something good to happen. We need somebody to step up like we did Katarian Thompson. We need that kind of performance from somebody on the men's side tomorrow to really keep Texas Tech honest on the defensive side. Because you know what's going to happen is everybody's going to be chasing Iverson Molinar around. So he's going to have to distribute and kind of make this team a little more potent from other offensive spots on the floor. All right, let's get to today's top 10 list, brought to you by closewithblair.com. You guys know Blair Chandler. If you don't, you should. Longtime friend of mine, great guy. And we all need a friend in the business, right? We never know what the business is where we're going to need the friend. But there are a lot of times there are opportunities in life that are kind of complicated. You need somebody that knows the ropes that can kind of help you navigate some of that confusion. I don't know there is anything out there that's more complicated than the mortgage industry at times. And see, Steve, it's sort of not that difficult. Well, yeah, it is. And especially if you've never gone through it before. And then there's always this fear of, I don't want to borrow my money against my house. I'm getting a little bit older. Sometimes it's necessary. Get your equity working for you. Maybe perhaps you've allowed your debt-to-income ratio to exceed your comfort level. Pay some bills off, especially if they're high-interest loans. Use your mortgage to help you financially. And maybe perhaps the dream of home ownership has eluded you. And maybe you just need the right guy or the right person or the right loan officer to kind of hold your hand through this and kind of get you going. That's Blair. Go to closewithblair.com. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair, B-L-A-I-R.com. Or I'll tell you what, let me give you his phone number, his personal number, not his administrative assistant's number, not his office number. This is his number, 601-500-2344. Again, that's 601-500-2344. And here's the deal. If you mention to Blair that you heard about him on the Boneyard, he's going to pay for your appraisal. That's right. He's going to pay for it. It's about a $500 to $600 value. A lot of fees associated with getting a mortgage approved. Well, Blair's like, you know what, let me save you a little bit. Let me give you some incentive because we're going to keep it in the family. No matter who you root for, if you listen to the Boneyard, you get those savings. So be sure to tell them by text or by email or by phone, hey, I heard about you on the Boneyard, and boom, that appraisal is paid for. Again, closewithblair.com. Okay, we're going to wrap up our two-part series. Our buddy Nick, I think it was Nick, that reached out and said, hey, Steve, how about rock bands with colors and their names? And I never know what you guys are dealing with or how you come up with these ideas, but I like the idea. I like modern rock, contrary to popular belief. Like, if people that really know me know that, I'm a big Shinedown guy. Shinedown dropped a new single this week called Planet Zero off the forthcoming album. Really excited about that. It'll be out March or April, I think. Excited to have new music from those guys. I love Alter Bridge. Love the Foo Fighters. I like some of these newer bands that have come out. Rain City Drive is a band that I really like a lot. And so this list is going to be kind of a combo, though, because I actually went back and included some 90s. There's no 80s in this list. I could do an 80s color band group. Maybe we even put Living Color in there. But the reality of it is I wanted to do something a little more modern. But I did expand it a little bit. It's not just all bands from this century, but there are bands that are still active that maybe began in the 90s. And so here are your top 10 modern rock bands with colors. Now, a couple of these bands don't have a big catalog, but I wanted to work the songs in because I really liked them. And it is my show. It is my list. You could have your own list, but your list would be wrong. But number 10, I wanted to work this one in because, number one, it's really kind of a novelty song, but also, two, it gave us our first introduction to one of the great rock icons in recent memory. That's Maynard James Keenan of Tool and Perfect Circle. And the name of the band is Green Jelly. They used to be called Green Jello. And then, of course, I guess it was the people from Kellogg's had a bit of a problem with them calling themselves Green Jello. So they changed the name to Green Jelly, and they did this take on the Three Little Pigs. And it had this claymation type video. And so Maynard sang the part of the pigs, that falsetto, the knot by the hair of my chinny. I'm not going to do it. I know you want me to do it. I'm not going to do it. But that's Maynard. That's Maynard from Tool that sang that. And these guys were great friends. And then, of course, one of the guys that I believe was the bass player from Green Jelly became a member of Tool. And so kind of the infancy. You never thought you'd learn that today. Okay, there's a song about the Three Little Pigs named by a band after Jell-O that birthed one of the great rock bands of my generation. You didn't know that? And now you do. Now you do. So now you walk down to that friend of yours that thinks he knows so much about music and say, hey, you know the first big hit that Maynard James Keenan sang on? They're going to say, oh, it's going to be Sober from Tool. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. Go show off your new knowledge. Number 9, this is a band that I really dug when they first came out. I haven't heard as much from them as of late. They have had some recent albums, but I have not listened to them. I probably should. But there's a band called Candlelight Red. Candlelight Red. And their debut song off their first EP, I believe it was a 4 or 5 track EP, and it was phenomenal. A song called Demons from Candlelight Red. Kind of got that industrial feel a little bit. And that's one of the things that I'll say. We go through this in music every like decade. It's like we have guys that are kind of stripped down, just playing good rock and roll, and then we add like a synth, and we add all this, post-production type elements to make it sound more industrial. And so you're getting a lot of that now, but some of the things that I'm kind of hearing, from artists today in interviews and things like that is, well, I think we're about to strip it down again. But Candlelight Red, one of those bands that really uses the industrial type sound. Okay, I told you guys, I gave you a teaser. A band that I really like, they're a bunch of young guys, and I don't know if they've done anything in the last year or two, but a band called Black Tide, and the guitar on this is phenomenal. The very first time I heard this, I was like, where are these guys from? I really thought they had a great sound to kind of get going. They had a great song, too, called Warriors of Time that I really dug. But on our list, your number 8 song today is a song called Shockwave by Black Tide. Shockwave. And there is a little bit of language in the chorus, and so maybe you don't play it loud with the kids in the car. But I promise you this, when you hear that guitar solo kick in, you're going to need to make sure that the cruise control is set. If not, you're going to have your foot on the floor and your fist in the air. All right, number 7, a band that I saw in Biloxi, Mississippi here a couple years ago with Korn and Breaking Benjamin. It's a band called Motionless in White. Like these guys a lot. Again, a big industrial type sound, and it kind of drags a little bit at times, like live, because a lot of the songs sound similar. But I love the studio work from them. I wanted to go back a couple years with them. They have had some really good tunes as of late. I could have gone Reincarnate here, but I went with America. I love that song. I love how in your face it is. It's America, your number 7 song from Motionless in White. Number 6, I dig this band, and what's interesting too, when I went to Hollywood here a few years back, I elected to get a tattoo at West Hollywood Tattoo, which is kind of a legendary tattoo place in Hollywood, just down the street, from the Whiskey A Go-Go, and I got a chance to go see all that and ride by there, and I felt like a kid again. It's like, oh, well, that's where Motley Crue played, and that's where Rat played, and there's a Troubadour. There's all these great places down there. And if you've never been and driven down Rodeo Drive, you owe it to yourself to go. It was a bucket list thing for me. So I went out to West Hollywood. I got a tattoo, and it just so happens that the guy that did my tattoo also tattoos a couple of the guys in this band, Black Veil Brides. And he showed me, several autographs and pictures. And what's amazing to go in there, it's Robert Benedetto is the lead guy there. It's his shop. But you walk in that place, and there's like all these platinum records on the wall. It's Guns N' Roses. It's Motley Crue. It's like the who's who of the West Hollywood scene. And all these people have been tattooed at this tattoo shop. And so it's basically a souvenir for me. I'm a bit of a collector. And I was like, you know what? I'll always be able to say I sat in the same chair that Ozzy Osbourne sat in to get a tattoo. And it's true. It's in a quick story about that too. Ozzy was on an interview with K-Rock. He took the interview at the tattoo shop. This is back in the 80s, kind of like in the height of the Ozzy Osbourne mania. And they said, hey, well, Ozzy, what are you up to these days? He goes, oh, I'm down here getting a tattoo. And he said where it was. And then like an hour later, they had to sneak him out of the building. They had to bring in police because everybody ran down there to get a glimpse of Ozzy. Pretty crazy. But Black Veil Brides, I like this song in the end. It is one of those songs that kind of makes me feel empowered. I really do. And when I think about writing the book of recovery, this is kind of one of the songs that I think about. It's just, who's going to tell the story of your life? And I feel like that I need to do that. But, the reality of it is Black Veil Brides is kind of a throwback. They wear kind of like the Kiss style clothing. They had the big choruses, kind of a tribute band to the 80s. But I do like those guys a lot. And Andy, the singer from Black Veil Brides, also a huge Cincinnati Bengals fan. All right, number 5 on the list, and I love this band. I have met these guys as well. I actually saw them play down in South Louisiana at a bar in Lafayette, Louisiana. Been to that place several times. Met so many different people there. 10 Years, Avatar, and the band Red. They're actually a Christian band, Red. 9 or 10 albums out now, I think. If you don't know Red, you need to know Red. You do. They're great. They're a great band. They're great live. And again, they've got a little bit of an industrial sound. It's a little heavy, but it's more radio friendly than perhaps maybe Motionless in White. Red's a great band. I wanted to include them. I went with the song Feed the Machine. It's very much industrial. And, basically it's about, commerce and how we have such a individualistic society that places so much value on that sort of stuff. And you got to do your part to go out there and feed the machine. It's like I work all day. Let me go spend my money to feed the machine, to feed all this commercialism. And so it's not a political song per se. It's just more of a social commentary. But again, if you don't know Red, you need to know them. And I say that right now. I don't care what if you're a rock music fan at all, if you like Christian music or you don't. And it's not like really in your face. When it comes to that sort of stuff, it is still kind of radio friendly, but they are very much a religious band, even though at times they have had some albums that hadn't necessarily been, scripturally based. That's not to say that they've abandoned their faith by any stretch of the imagination, but they're a very diverse band, and I think you would really dig them if you don't know them. If you're looking for a new band to kind of get into, listen to Red. All right, number 4, kind of going in the opposite direction. One of the great guitar players of this generation. And maybe not the soloist that maybe some other guys like Mark Tremonti are. But this guy is a rock guitarist. One of the best ever. Talking about Zakk Wylde and the Black Label Society. Number 4 on your list, the song Stillborn from Black Label Society. Could have gone in this river, but I was in a rockin' mood today, so we're going to go Stillborn. And here's an interesting thing about Zakk Wylde. So Zakk Wylde actually joined Ozzy when I was still in high school. He's reunited, of course, for the the final tour, which everybody has like 10 final tours. But Zakk Wylde had one of the funniest quotes, and I actually had a chance to talk to Eddie Trunk about this. Eddie didn't remember. It was I was able to stump Eddie. We have a mutual friend that put us together, and I had a couple questions I asked him. He didn't know the answer. This is one of them. So back shortly after Zakk Wylde joined Ozzy Osbourne, he was interviewed in Guitar Magazine, and I was a subscriber. And they said, asked him kind of how he felt about his place in history. He goes, I'm the 3rd luckiest guy in the world. And so Zakk, being much more intelligent than people realize and much funnier than people realize, wasn't talking about succeeding Randy Rhoads and Jackie Lee. He was talking about 2 other guys. And you're thinking, so the interviewer finally gets back to it, and he goes, yeah, 3 luckiest guys in the world, Randy Rhoads, Jackie Lee, and Zakk Wylde. And Zakk said, oh, no. He said, I'm the 3rd luckiest guy in the world behind Dan Quayle and Pee Wee Herman. And I laughed and laughed and laughed. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. And again, if you ever go watch that Behind the Music special, you'll see a lot about Zakk, but also, too, you can find those, that metal show episodes on YouTube and maybe Paramount Plus. And watch the ones with Zakk, because he is an absolute riot. But, again, one of the great rock guitar players. He has a huge following, huge. When Black Label Society plays, it is a real rock crowd. Okay, number 3, we're going to lighten it up a little bit down the stretch here. And we're going to go with a little more, some bands that had a little more commercial success. Number 3, and I believe this was their debut single. And they've been around forever and a day, and they've in many ways kind of become an adult contemporary band. And I hate to say it that way because Adam Levine has become such a household name, but I dig the older stuff a little bit better. Not that he's not ultra talented, he is. But I went back to Harder to Breathe by Maroon 5 as your number 3 song. Harder to Breathe, back when they were really a rock band. So there you go. Number 2, no list of bands with colors in their names would be complete without the Black Crowes. So that's your number 2 band. And thought about putting them in with the classic rock bands, but I didn't feel like that was right. I didn't feel like they fit. They are a legendary band, but I think I considered them more in the modern era. And I remember when Shake Your Money Maker and all that stuff dropped in the early going, I was like, you know what, this is something different than what I've been listening to. Much different. And the very first time that I heard these guys play Jealous Again, I was like, these guys are different. So I went out and bought Shake Your Money Maker, and I loved every single track. And then the next thing you know, there's this album and that album, and I have them all. I love the Black Crowes. I love Chris Robinson. I'm glad that they've gotten back together. I hope to see them again. Hope before they get mad at each other again. But Chris is incredible, an incredible songwriter, incredible showman, kind of in the same vein as Mick Jagger in many respects. I had a chance to see these guys with Government Mule years ago down in Lafayette, Louisiana, and their rendition of The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down was just incredible. I think it lasted like 15 minutes. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. And sometimes I'll call up their live versions of that song because I think they just do a great job of it. And the Black Crowes are a phenomenal band. So we went with the Remedy today. Remedy by the Black Crowes, your number 2 song. But number 1, and I was on this band's bandwagon long before most of you Mississippi middle-aged guys. And that's where I am now. In my heart, sometimes I still feel like I'm 19 or 18 or whatever. But I remember being a kid, and I had to special order this poster, this Mother's Milk poster that was made like of this really textured paper. It wasn't like the typical poster. It was very expensive, and I ordered it. And sent my thing off to their fan club, and they sent me this great poster, and it wasn't signed, Anthony. It was the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I was on those guys. I actually learned about the Chili Peppers from one of my brother's friends, and he was in college, and he was a guy from out of state, and he was like playing this stuff in his room. I was like, who is that? Next thing I know, I'm down the rabbit hole. Red Hot Chili Peppers. I love them, and when I was in rehab, and I said that so casually, but we're all friends, right? You know, Blood Sugar Sex and Magic was out, and that song Under the Bridge really meant a lot to me. And I have scar tissue around here. It's right next to me. I haven't started reading it yet. Perhaps I will once we get through signing day. I've got 4 or 5 books. I've got that Dave Grohl book I've got to read here pretty soon. But that one meant a lot to me, and Anthony, of course, is in recovery. And I think an awful lot of him. But I went with By the Way. By the Way is your number 1 song today on Top 10 Modern Rock Bands with colors in their name. I don't know how people don't like the Chili Peppers, and I know that there are some people that think they're really silly and that sort of stuff. These guys are very accomplished musicians. These guys do it right. They put on a phenomenal show. If you're not a fan, you should be. So there you go. That's your Top 10 Modern Rock Band list with colors in their names. And appreciate the suggestion as always. I like it when you guys are somewhat creative, but sometimes you get a little too specific. You know, it's like, hey, Steve, what about top 10 songs by bands whose singers were born in the second week of August? You know, and that's really cool, but I'm not going to do that level of research. A lot of good lists out there. And so Monday, we're doing another rock band that formed in the late 80s and had some huge radio hits. And this is not a hair band. How about that? It's a rock band you know, with songs that you sung and songs that you loved. We hadn't done yet. I texted Roy the other day. I said, hey, have we done this band? He's like, nope, we're doing it Monday. I'm excited about it. Really, really excited about it. It was kind of a super group in some respects. They kind of put some of the best pieces from other bands together, and they formed this super group, and it turned out to really work well for all of us. And that's a little hint there. I don't think any of you will figure it out, though. Maybe you will. No more hints, though. That's your top 10 list. You have an idea for the top 10 list, reach out, let me know. You can find me on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. Let me encourage you, as always, follow Roy Samante and Izzy Mandelbaum on Twitter. If you're a Spotify listener, Roy's the way to go. If you're Apple Music, you go with Izzy. Roy can be found at Dogmatic67. That's DAWGMATIC 67 on Spotify and Twitter. And then Izzy always responds to Roy's tweets, and so maybe perhaps you jump in there with Izzy. Because, you don't think you're better than him, do you? It's go time. Little Seinfeld reference for those of you that are looking at the TV like, what's going on? All right, let's get to our next segment of the show. Brought to you by Campus Book Mart. Longtime sponsors of this show. Love those folks to death. Matter of fact, I'm heading up there as soon as we finish the show. Go by and say goodbye to longtime employee. Cheyenne is leaving the family and has found her a great job. She has her degree from Mississippi State. And now she is taking her talents on the road, and I understand headed to New York. So good for her. I want to go by there and tell her goodbye because, again, those people are like family to me, and they'll treat you like family too. It's not that I'm just so doggone special. They love everybody, including you. Stan the Man, Miss Kathy Brown, lovely, talented Susie. They will love you like your own kin folks do. Always finding great Mississippi State merchandise for you to purchase. Reach out to them at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays, and that is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $50. Any order less than $50, absolutely incomplete. Again, that's campusbookmart.net. Promo code BSR. It is hoodie time of year. And let me tell you right now, because you're not thinking about that, you're thinking about those sunbathed days out in the left field lounge of May, June. That's not what we're going to get next month. If you hadn't already bought your hoodie, you need to do it now. Go ahead and order that today. Get that M over S hoodie. Be glad you did. Save yourself a little time and trouble on game day. Again, that's campusbookmart.net. Promo code BSR. All right, let's spend a few minutes talking a little bit about this Rickea Wilson thing. I don't know why, but for the last few weeks, this has really been on my mind, and I was thinking, how awful this all is. This happened back on January 21st, 2020. So we have just passed the 2-year anniversary of the Rickea Wilson's passing. And this family to this day still does not have a lot of answers. Now, before I began to really pursue this, I reached out to the family and said, hey, I'm looking to write an article about this to kind of draw some attention to the case. I want to keep this in conversation. I want this to be something that people are still aware of, that we do not have justice for Bear, that one of our most beloved former players in this generation is no longer with us and no one has been held accountable. Now, one thing I want to say, I don't ever want to do anything that stirs up unrest for people that are dealing with grief. I don't. That's to me, it's insensitive. There's no story that's worth that. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, we want to do this. And I shared with his mom, Tamika, I said, listen, we want you guys to know we have not forgotten about you and about Bear and what has happened. We haven't. We have not forgotten. And while we may not have corresponded recently, it doesn't mean that we've necessarily moved on. We're still living our lives, but I think a lot of people have kind of maybe just thought, hey, maybe the police have gotten somebody I just haven't heard. Well, nothing's happened. Nothing's happened. Now, I'm not saying that to be critical of the Birmingham Police Department. Please understand me. And you're not going to hear me rant and rave about that, okay? But one thing that I will say, and maybe if nothing else, we got this accomplished yesterday. So first, as soon as I drop the kid off at school, I get back and I start making phone calls. And I left messages with several people. The information officer, the homicide division, found out who the detective was, a message for him. So I start leaving these messages in the morning, and I just wanted somebody to talk to get information about where to send tips and any update they could provide. Now, of course, they're not going to give us, details of an investigation, nor should they. But I started making all these calls, and I didn't get a call back for a long time. And then I finally get a call back, and we connect with this officer, and they said, hey, it just so happens we just sent out our release today on our social media asking the community for help on this situation. So there's a couple things that tells me. Is number one, that maybe, just maybe, if nothing else, the phone calls maybe led to, hey, you know what, maybe we should do this. Not saying they did it because of me, but I'm just saying that maybe they were afraid that I was going to write an article that was, unflattering to them. I don't know. I don't know what their motivation was. But at the very least, they did that yesterday. Very grateful for that. They put the information out there kind of asking for help. But the fact they're asking for help, even though they tell me we've made some progress in the case, tells me they haven't made any progress in the case. And that's what's really sad to me. That's really, really sad to me. And again, I don't know the job, and especially, in circumstances like this, there are a lot of people that don't want to talk. In fact, multiple people close to Bear did not want to talk on the record. They did not want to talk on the record. And part of that is because, as one family member said, there's a killer out here walking around that knows me, and I don't know who they are. That's really, really scary. It also made me realize that we have a part to play in this too. We need to keep this case alive. We need to do our part to help this family and the Birmingham Police Department to kind of keep this thing in the conversation. I'm not saying we have to do it every single day, but I'm going to follow up with them periodically, just as, hey, how are we? What are we doing? Because what if it was your family member? And in some respects it is. Now we talk about, we don't have fans, we have family, and that's cute. And it's true in some respects. It really is a family. But this is a family dealing with a real life situation that was a big part of our family during Bear's tenure here at Mississippi State. And let's not let our family relationship end just because his eligibility did. Does that make sense? So I'm going to ask you, and so many of you have retweeted the article, I'm going to ask you, because we didn't put it behind a paywall, we did it for free. There's always a certain format we got to follow, whatever. But let's keep this case in the conversation publicly. And I feel somewhat ashamed that I hadn't done something before now. Not that it's going to lead to anything, not that I'm going to break the case. We're not going to turn the Boneyard into, a true crime podcast. But this is our brother, our son, our maroon family member that was murdered, left 5 young children behind, and no one has been held accountable. It saddens me. It does. And again, I don't say that in any way to be critical of the Birmingham Police Department. It's a very, very difficult situation. And again, there are people that probably have information that are somewhat reluctant to come forward because of fear of reprisals. Don't know the circumstances behind Bear's death. Just know that they found him robbed and shot to death in his own residence. And I just encourage you, if you've ever raised a cowbell in support of De'Runye Wilson or anything that he did, I'm going to encourage you, let's say a prayer for him and his family and for the detectives working this case. Let's provide some support. I've had some people reach out and said, hey, Steve, what if we put together a reward, for information leading to the conviction? I think that's outstanding. I don't know how to go about any of that. But it's like, hey, what if we put together, to maybe help the police a little bit? And of course, they're encouraging people to call Crime Stoppers. Other people have said, hey, I've got a friend in the area that's an attorney. I've got a friend in the area that's a journalist. I got a friend in the area that may know some people that could help get more publicity for this case. Because here's the thing that I think needs to happen is the people or persons responsible for this need to be reminded this is not going away. That we're going to keep this going. We're going to keep this in the conversation until there is justice and closure for this family and for our fallen brother. That needs to happen. And the thing that I go back to, and I thought about this yesterday, and I guess maybe go back another day. I had already done some preliminary work, and I decided I wanted to go eat. And it's like, well, I took my kid to church, and I was like, while he's going to that, instead of just going home, I'm going to go just kind of sit and collect my thoughts. And I sat there for a while, and I called Mike Nemeth, and I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to really pursue this. And at the very least, get an update for our fans, and maybe we can kind of draw some attention to the case again. And I reached out to Bill Martin, former Mississippi State media relations director, and he's at Tennessee now. And he's like, yeah, man, this would be great. Let's do this. Because I don't think that Tamika Wilson and her family should ever feel alone in this. And I know that our loss in no way compares to hers, in no way whatsoever. I'm not in any way trying to suggest that. But I also don't want her to ever feel like, you know what, the Mississippi State people loved us as long as Bear was playing there. But after he died and after we got him buried, and so many of you generously gave to that GoFundMe to make sure that he had a suitable burial. But I don't want her to feel like, well, you know what, they helped me through that, but then they're gone. You know, life goes on. That's true. But what if it was your child? What if it was your friend? What if it was your former high school teammate? Wouldn't you want somebody to kind of shine a light on this and just kind of help you? Because the last thing we ever need to happen in this case is for people to feel like that we've forgotten. That we've forgotten. Well, I got away with it. Nobody's talking about it anymore. It's all died down. Let's not let it die down. You know, it's the thing that I've always learned about life is that everything that is measured improves. Like everything that you set like some accountability to gets better. You know, people begin to kind of rise. And same thing with this kind of stuff. It's like as soon as it leaves the discussion, then all of a sudden, and again, I'm not being critical of Birmingham PD, but if we stop talking about it, there's a little less urgency. I'm not trying to say those guys aren't professional. But when there are people involved, and I'm not saying we want to harass anybody involved in law enforcement ever, but maybe we can help, not just sharing articles written by me or the Birmingham paper, but sharing, you know, these requests for information and for cooperation from the community, from the Birmingham Police Department. You know, let's keep this conversation going. And, you know, a lot happens in life, and you get balled in. And my life is fixing to get very, very busy, you know, with the new book coming out finally. But the reality of all this is that, you know, having had people in my life murdered, you know, and nobody ever held accountable, there's a part of you that kind of dies with them. And then there's another part of you that kind of aches along, crying out for justice. And then if you don't get it, that part dies too. I don't want to see this happen with Derunye Wilson. And listen, that's not in any way to suggest that his death or loss is any more significant than anybody else has died in the city of Birmingham. I'm not trying to suggest that. But we don't have a relationship with them. We have a relationship with this family. And so I ask you for your support or ideas or anything you have, and even if it's just something as simple as, you know what, Steve, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter, and I'm going to go look up the Birmingham PD social media accounts, and I'm going to share this for Bear. I'm going to share this for this family because it's the right thing to do. We're not going to make anything on this. That's not the objective. We're trying to help this family get justice for a young man that represented our university well. And you know what? I wish he'd have come back for his senior year too. I really do. I think he would have probably polished out the game. But here's the thing, and I spoke to Tim Brewster yesterday. You know, Tim was the guy that basically identified Bear. You know, Bear didn't play high school football until like his senior year. And I remember getting his film, and the thing that impressed me is he's down the field just waylaying people, blocking down the field. I think this is the team first guy. You know, he got here and he kind of had to figure it out. You know, but Tim Brewster's the guy that stood on the table to get him. We actually had another receiver, and I won't mention the name. We had another receiver committed that had kind of a subpar senior year. We dropped him and took Derunye Wilson. And everybody was so incredibly critical. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, why did we do this? I can't believe we would do this. This kid's been committed to us for this long. We drop him, and then we take this 2-star kid from Winona High School in Birmingham. And little did we know that guy was going to be the leading X receiver on a team that went to number 1 in the country. I go back and watch that Auburn game, and I remember how much it meant to Bear. In 2015, we went back to Auburn and we beat those guys too. In the final seconds of that game, Derunye Wilson walked over to the Mississippi State section and he blew a kiss to everybody that came because we won again. We beat Auburn back-to-back years, beat them at their place. And I remember what it meant to him is because in the final 2, he picked Mississippi State over Auburn and people criticized him for it. absolutely criticized him for it. And then he came to Mississippi State anyway. We did the best we could. Wish he would have come back, but he didn't. And now he's moved on. And now he's no longer with us. And so I just encourage you, anything you can do to kind of help draw attention to this case, please do so until this family can have justice and the bear can rest in peace. All right, final segment of the show. Let's talk a little recruiting, brought to you by the fine folks at Portico. I've told you before, if I was moving to Starkville, this would be my first option. I would look at Portico long and hard because, number one, the proximity to the Mississippi State campus. I would like to be closer to campus. You want to be closer to campus. On game day, saves you a lot of time and trouble. I mean, how many times do you load up all your gear, all your tailgating stuff, and you drag it from all over the country to go set up in a junction to enjoy time with friends and family? Well, if you lived at Portico, that's a very, very short drive. 1.1 miles from the Mississippi State campus, conveniently located right off of 82. You take that turn at 12, the very first right, Pat Station Road leads you to Portico. Very easy to find, very easy to get to, easy access to every major highway in Starkville. Be sure, if you're thinking of moving to Starkville, to give them an opportunity to serve you. Let me encourage you, too. Give our friend Brooks Bryan a call. Great friend, and this is a guy that is committed to making Starkville and Mississippi State a much better place. Not that it's not awesome now, they're making it more awesome. 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. Phase 1 completely sold out. Phase 2, construction's getting underway. Need the weather to cooperate with us a little bit, but you can get a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home up to a 4-bedroom, 4-bath home. And here's the deal. Because the construction hasn't fully been finished, you can have a say in picking your lot. You can have a say in picking the house plans. You kind of get it as you want it. That's a cool thing. How many times in life do you go buy a home or you move into a new place, and it's great, but it's not everything you want? You're like, well, I love the place, but I wish this, I wish that. Well, now you can have some say in that. Reach out to Brooks Bryan today and make Portico your next move. All right, biggest recruiting story right now that's being discussed over on genespage.com is a decision that has been made in the last 24 hours. Mississippi State not planning now to sign Biloxi 3-star defensive lineman R.J. Moss. He is a guy that committed to Mississippi State back during the summer. Was expected to sign in December. That got pushed back. At that point, there was some, according to some of his coaches, there was some doubt about his ability to qualify. They put him on an academic plan. I understand he is following that. But it does appear it is going to be a tight squeeze. It is not a foregone conclusion that he doesn't need to go to JUCO for a couple years. Now, here is my gripe in all of this. And I know that it is not popular among other people, and I'm okay with that too. Here's the deal. I don't like the timing of it. If you make this decision back in December or you communicate this to them back in early January, you give him the opportunity to take some other visits and for his high school coaches to reach out to schools that perhaps had some interest early on and share with them that he's back on the market. So I don't like the timing. Now, here's the thing, too. I'm also not a Pollyanna. This is not the Boy Scouts. This is a Southeastern Conference. And so if Mike Leach and that staff feels like, hey, listen, we've got to make some other decisions, I respect that. I just don't like how this was communicated and as late as it was. That's my concern with all of this. Because at the end of the day, this is a young man that's been loyal to Mississippi State. He's had other opportunities to take visits, and he's elected not to. He has remained locked in with Mississippi State. Now, of course, getting into school here and getting into school there's a uniform criteria for every bit of that. It is a difficult business, and sometimes there is some collateral damage. And unfortunately, that appears to be the case with R.J. Moss. Now, I understand that he's got some Sun Belt interest. He'll probably take a visit somewhere this weekend. Don't know for sure. But here's what I also understand, too, that he could have been in a situation, too, where he goes, you know what, I'm going to wait this thing out and see if things happen later with Mississippi State. He could do that. I would not advise him to do that, though. I would take the sure thing, especially with the transfer portal out there now. It's like, hey, maybe I sign with South Alabama and put together a good year and I go in the portal and perhaps then I've proven myself on the FBS level and I've got an opportunity to be in the Power 5. But it is a difficult undertaking. This is a young man that, that I like an awful lot. And then now here we are, him scrambling here at the end to find somewhere to go to school. Now, at the end of the day, Mike Leach and these guys are charged with signing the best players that advance Mississippi State's football program. For sure. There's no doubt about it. That's what you have to do. Now, the flip side of this, too, and, if we're going to hand out some indictments and be critical of people, let's be fair about this, too. If you're in strong academic standing, we're not having this conversation, right? And so you need to take care of business and ensure that you don't give anybody any reason to have any questions about your ability to enroll, handle college coursework, and the rigors and demands of playing in a Southeastern Conference. Every bit of that's true. Every bit of that is true. And there's no way you can walk away from that. It is a very difficult undertaking to be recruited by an SEC school and then enroll and handle the demands that are put on student athletes. And so if Mike Leach and or the staff decides, hey, we've got questions about this, then they need to go in a different direction. I just think it needs to be communicated earlier. That's my only gripe. Because, listen, we drop kids all the time. Everybody does. Alabama does it. LSU does it. Now, of course, our fans, and this is where I don't want to be preachy here, but I'm going to say some things. One of the things that about our fan base at times that is kind of the best and worst thing is like sometimes we act like that the standards that we apply to other people shouldn't apply to us. It's like we're more critical of our staff and we're more critical of our decisions. And you can say, well, I just want what's best for Mississippi State. Well, here's the deal. There are probably some things about certain situations that we don't know all the details to. We have strong opinions, but we don't have a lot of facts. And so I share that with you, especially in a situation such as this, that if Mike Leach feels like certain players can't advance this program, then he doesn't need to sign them. He just needs to communicate that earlier. People forget that we dropped Tyler Woodard earlier this year. He was the guy that I saw in the spring that was an outstanding player. And then next thing I know, it's time to come to camp, and he has a bad evaluation in camp. He's offered an opportunity to come back to Big Dog Camp and work out, and because he wasn't 100% when he worked out in June. Rather than come back and compete, he elected not to. Well, Mississippi State moves on and takes another defensive back. And, of course, that happened back during the season. And so we kind of forget that. Jatarius Elam was a guy that I like an awful lot. He was the guy that committed very early to Mississippi State. Came to camp, wouldn't work out. Offered an opportunity to come back for Big Dog Camp. He elected not to take it. Next thing you know, Mississippi State takes another player in his position. Colin Griffin is a guy that was basically kind of part of a calf-cow deal. Recently committed to Clemson, and I think it's a real reach for Clemson. But you know what? They're the ones taking that reach. He comes to camp at Mississippi State. He's part of the top dog camp. He doesn't have a good day at camp. And I remember watching him that day, and I was very concerned. I'm thinking, what? I don't know if this kid's good enough, for us to take 2 scholarships. And we're going to take him and his friend. We're going to keep him to keep his friend. Well, his friend ultimately flips to Tennessee anyway. And to me, that makes perfect sense. We're just going to move on. If you're a guy and that you are, kind of part of this package deal, if you're the cow in the calf-cow deal and we're not going to get the cow, we're certainly not going to take the calf. And now Colin Griffin's committed to Clemson, and people are like, hey, Steve, well, look at this. I am perfectly okay with that. Perfectly okay. Because here's the deal. And I'm going to share this with you, and I'm going to be honest with you because we're family, right? I like Joe Moorhead a lot. I do. And I think Joe was a good recruiter. I don't think Joe was a great evaluator. I think Joe and his staff did a great job getting guys to say yes and then keeping them committed to Mississippi State and ultimately getting them to the signing day table. I commend them for that, their ability to do that. And some of that was very difficult to do. After they had the coaching change at Ole Miss, you may recall that the new staff at Ole Miss and then the network involved there, they tried to push Emmanuel Forbes and Armandus Cooley and others to visit. And there was this all-out effort to flip a Mississippi State commitment, and Joe got everybody to sign in December. Everybody. And it wasn't just by default. We had to really work hard to do it. And I remember walking out that day, and Joe looked at me and he says, they didn't get any of our kids. They didn't get any. But here's the problem with that. Some of the guys that we took under Joe were G5 players. Some of those guys are marginal players that perhaps could have developed into SEC contributors, perhaps two deepers, but there wasn't a ton of stars. And I don't mean from the rankings. I mean in reality. There were a lot of guys that were good players that weren't great players. And many of those guys have now hit the transfer portal. We're basically going through that purge right now. There's still one or two guys out there that will probably leave the team post-spring. Because the reality of it is they're not good enough to play here. So we don't want to replicate that. We're just kind of getting out of that cycle, so let's not add to it. You know, when you go out and you get guys like Tyler Woodard, who, I think is a good player, but this is a guy, too, that didn't do what was expected of him to solidify his standing with Mississippi State. Same thing for Terrence Shannon, and in some respects, R.J. Moss. And again, I'm not a fan of the timing. The reason we're not all upset about Elam and not all upset about Woodard is because of the fact that they had ample opportunity to find a landing spot. Now, Terrence Shannon is still out there on social media saying, if you need a DB, I'm your guy. But this is a situation of his making. If he had come to camp and worked out and put together a good workout, he would have signed with Mississippi State in December. And one could say the same thing in some respects about R.J. Moss too. If there were not any questions about his situation, he would have signed in December. Now, I'm not going to sit here and besmirch a young man. Not going to do that. Everybody involved in that situation, has some blame to take in this. But the reality of it is, as much as I hate it, I also understand. Because if Mississippi State signs a player and then they fail to qualify, we don't get that scholarship back this year. It's not like it was years ago. Like years ago, you sign everybody in February, and then all of a sudden, if you have two or three guys that didn't qualify, well, then you could use those scholarships to sign mid-year enrollee guys from the junior college ranks in December. Well, you no longer have that option. The NCAA is very serious about preventing oversigning. Because there were some schools who basically would just go sign, 35 kids and then run off 10 or 15 from their active roster. And you can't cut players due to athletic performance. You can cut them from disciplinary reasons, and you can encourage them. You can sit guys down and say, look, here's the reality of your situation here. You're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to go somewhere else and play, because here's where you rank in the pecking order. And so barring some injuries or transfers, chances are you're not going to play. You can have those honest conversations and say, listen, if you want to enter the transfer portal, we completely understand. That's the reality of life. But you can't just run them off. Like if a guy says, well, I'm not going to leave, I'm going to stay here and work and fight, well, they can do that. But the reality of that situation is, it's like, hey, if your position coach is telling you, hey, we're going to play 10 receivers and you're number 14, chances of you seeing the field pretty slim. And so those guys kind of understand what's expected of them. And so I don't think we ever need to go out and sign guys that are academic risk. I don't think we should ever go out and sign guys that are athletic risk, and certainly not guys that are character risk. And one thing I'll say in the last few years, I don't think we've signed many bad actors. I think we've done a really good job evaluating these young men as people and kind of talking to people around them and kind of fully appreciating what they bring to the table. And I think R.J. Moss is a guy that has impeccable character. Everybody that I've talked to at Biloxi High School speaks very highly of him. But he was a guy, too, that had some work to do. He had some work to do. There's no doubt about it. So we move on. Now, there are some people, too, that have this, this blame Mississippi State first mentality. And, of course, there is some blame to go around here. But it's almost like every day we find something else to blame Mississippi State about. And I just say, with folks like that, who needs rebels, right? I mean, if we have our own, every step that the staff makes, they're critical of, and again, you're making these assumptions and making these opinions, based on the fact that you don't have all the facts. And so things often make sense in hindsight. And not to mention, and this is something that's kind of lost in translation at times, we have room to sign 31 players under the current rule. But at this point, we don't have the scholarships available to do that. We're going to see a couple more players hit the transfer portal post-spring. We just had King Ani hit the portal yesterday. Now, he's the guy, people say, well, Steve, why would he do it now? He can't enroll anywhere else. Well, here's the deal. He has a chance to graduate this May. So he goes in the portal now because, contrary to popular belief, if you plan to transfer within the Southeastern Conference, you have to be in the portal before February 1st. And so not to say that King Ani will get an SEC opportunity somewhere, but you remove all hope of that if you wait and go in the portal late. So he goes in the portal now. He can graduate in May and then be a grad transfer and still have, 3 years left to play? So he might find an opportunity somewhere. I don't think it'll be in the Southeastern Conference. But then when you see these guys go in the portal after the enrollment date at a new school, that doesn't mean they expect to get into school and go through spring practice somewhere else. More times than not, it means that they're going to find the landing destination later in this process. And by going in the portal now, they can take visits throughout the spring and then enroll for summer school at their new school. And so there are, again, a lot of things, we make a lot of assumptions without knowing the facts. And so I share that so you guys can be somewhat educated about this process. But not going to have many official visitors this weekend. Javay Gilmore will be here. There was talk about potentially 4 visitors this weekend. And now without R.J. Moss coming, and then Jalen Farmer is an offensive line prospect that we've been recruiting for some time. Alabama offers yesterday. He's headed there this weekend. He'll officially visit there and probably will end up signing there. But he is no longer an option for Mississippi State. I mean, obviously we would love to sign that guy, but if he's not going to visit, he's not going to sign here. That's just kind of how this thing works. And, we talked about Jamarian Burt earlier this week. Doesn't look like he's going to be here either. So it'll be Javay Gilmore this weekend will be your lone official visitor. And Wednesday's not going to be a big day for Mississippi State. Now, of course, you've got a couple of guys that are already in the boat that their signings will be announced. That's Caden Pope and, of course, Xavier Thomas. Interviewed Caden Pope a little bit earlier this week. So these are guys that they're already counted in the rankings. So you're not going to improve your ranking on Wednesday if you're Mississippi State unless you add some high school players. And, of course, we will be taking R.J. Moss off the commitment list. When it all kind of breaks loose. But you got Kamari Terrell out there. That's a defensive back from Shoemaker, Texas. He is a guy that Mississippi State is still pursuing. And then you've got A.J. Allen, running back that's committed to TCU. And I actually feel like State's got a little bit of juice right there. And so if you could add one of those two, you surely can do it Wednesday. But outside of that, there's not a lot of names out there just kind of rolling around. Now, there will be post-spring. It's crazy to think about this. It's like we just keep adding and adding and adding and adding signing dates constantly. And I think Mississippi State, again, is smart to hold a scholarship or two for the post-spring transfer portal entrance. And there are some guys that are in the portal now that Mississippi State's pursuing. As you guys know, Princeton Pines, an offensive lineman from Sam Houston State, the state recruited out of high school. He could be a guy you add late. And again, he's a guy that after this semester will be able to graduate with his degree and move on. Not eligible to come right now. He's already transferred once. He transferred from Baylor to Sam Houston. And so that's an option for you late. And it almost, the way this transfer portal stuff works, it just seems like it just makes better sense to keep a scholarship or two available because you may be able to get a player that makes you a better team in 2022. I want to thank you guys, too, for your patience with Dogpile the book. We were expected to get word that it had shipped this week. They've actually pushed that back now to the second week of February, which people have been so great about it. I am just so eager to have this done and have it on the shelves and for you guys to have your books. And I'm going to remind you guys, too, I said this on the show before, and I think it's important. That's why I say it. I have not earned a dime on this book yet. Not one. They offered to pay me royalties before Christmas, and I said, nope, I'm going to wait because until our people have their books, I don't feel right about spending their money. So none of that money's been spent. Not a dime. My family didn't get a better Christmas because of the delays for Dogpile. That's just not how I'm built. I have ethics, and there's nobody anywhere that probably would say, hey, well, Steve's got his money, and maybe they would. But I haven't. I haven't made a dime on this book, and I'm not going to take the first royalty check until after all your books have been shipped. I'm just not going to do it because I've got ethics, and that's how I feel about it. And, I'm doing fine. I've got a good job, and it's not like that I'm having to eat ramen noodles for dinner, even though sometimes I do. But the reality of it is that I just don't feel right about accepting any compensation for Dogpile until you guys have your product. And so if you're looking to order, you can. Go to dogpilethebook.com. And while you're there, you can pick up signed and personalized copies of Flim Flam, Alpha Dogs, and Stark Villains. If you're looking for Bloomsville Oleander, you find that through Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Books A Million, or through your local bookstore. Looking for Stark Villains gear, find it at StarkVillains.com. That's been pretty popular as of late. People hit me up regularly. They see me wearing one of the shirts. Steve, where did I get one? Easy, StarkVillains.com. You'll be glad you did. Maybe get one to wear to Duty Noble Field. How about that? You're looking for a hoodie. It's windy out there today. You'll be glad you have on some thicker clothes. Well, listen, that's going to do it for today. I'll be back on Monday. Hopefully we're talking about a big Mississippi State men's basketball win and perhaps 2 in a row for the ladies. But we'll be getting you ready on Monday for National Signing Day. Again, not expecting Wednesday to be a big day because most of the Bulldog hay is already in the barn. But we'll keep you apprised of the latest updates as we kind of move forward into National Signing Day, which is Wednesday of next week. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.
More than 1 in 3 people will face cancer in their lifetime. Unfortunately, fear can stop you from getting cancer screening, but it won't stop cancer. Early detection can save your life. Don't wait for symptoms to appear to act. Cancer screening is safe, effective, and accessible for everyone, including free or low-cost screening programs. Go to CancerScreenQuiz.com now and take the American Cancer Society's 2-minute cancer screening quiz to find out what screening tests are right for you. Don't wait. Take the quiz. Get screened. Go to CancerScreenQuiz.com now. CancerScreenQuiz.com.
Introducing Venture X, Capital One's new travel card for people always asking,
Where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.